And then hearing this report about Governor Pritzker still weighing his options when it comes to endorsing in the mayor's race. Okay. Remember, the anti-police attitude that McCarthy was speaking about goes all the way up to Governor Spalding. Made an issue of this. I made an issue of it because the niece of Sergeant James Severin made an issue of it in the last election. That it's Governor Pritzker's Illinois State Parole Board that is releasing cop killers who were sentenced to life in prison, who killed Sergeant James Severin in an and Anthony Rosado, Patrolman Anthony Rosado, in an ambush in 1970. They were supposed to serve life, like life without parole, and
they get paroled.
And they got the first one got paroled 2 years ago, and the next one is up for parole this summer, and it's J.B. Pritzker's hand-pointed parole board. So, again, the message that sends, as well as the attitude it evinces. Okay.
But I thought the Democratic Party was going to shift gears now and be more pro-police, per Biden.
With respect to public relations, not actual policing. It's exactly what Gary McCarthy said. It's such a nice way to summarize it in a single phrase. Public relations over public safety. From a public relations perspective, for political reasons, sure, they're going to mouth those words.
Right.
Substantively, don't count on it. Speaking of the big guy, Mr. 10%, President Biden, he was asked to explain why people don't understand how good things are under his presidency in terms of their economic fortunes. ABC News prompted him. Here's what he said.
Well, look, I think it goes well beyond the economy. Think about it. You make the news. I mean, you interview for the news. Can you think of anything I turn on the television and go, God, that makes me feel good? Almost anything. Everything is in the negative. We're also finding out now that one of the outlets has decided that they even put things on they know to be false in order to increase their ratings.
Of course. Again, it's just a public relations problem. They're suffering from a public relations onslaught by the right, the vast right-wing conspiracy. For more on this, pleased to be joined by the Capitalist Pig, Jonathan Hoenig, founding member of the Capitalist Pig Hedge Fund, Fox News contributor, author of a new textbook of Americanism, The Politics of Ayn Rand. Jonathan, thanks for joining us. Just a perception problem. People just don't appreciate how good they have it because there's just so much negativity from the news outlets.
Well, I mean, it's just the economics, and Dan and Andy, great to be with you. Good morning. The economics of that simply don't add up. I mean, the inflation, which was created, I believe, under President Trump and certainly exacerbated and continues to be exacerbated under President Biden, despite the so-called Inflation Reduction Act, that is prompting people at the end of the day to have a lower quality of life. We've talked about it. I mean, it could be not simply summed up on a spreadsheet, Dan, and I mean, people are working more, earning less, lower quality of life, lower values for their families and their futures. So this is that national malaise that's affecting every American at every different economic level that the president seems either to want to just ignore or evade whole cloth.
And so the advice and counsel from a capitalist pig like yourself is stick to cash at this point with the dubious state of markets and the unknowns as with respect to Fed policy. Cash pays right now.
Yeah, well, I mean, think about it, Dan. The cash now, for the first time in 16 years, a U.S. government bond actually yields more than 5%. But it's not a sure thing. I mean, keep in mind, we still have inflation running at 7%. So on an inflation-adjusted basis, even before taxes, you're still losing money. So this is what, inflation vexed 4 U.S. presidents, Stan. As you know, everyone from Kennedy all through Reagan. It caused a decade-plus worth of economic distress for the United States. So I think there's places to make money here. I think you can find some opportunities in commodities, even perhaps in some stocks. But this is going to be a very difficult environment in which to preserve the purchasing power of your wealth. And it's not because of tumult overseas. It's not even because of the greedy CEOs. It's because of the fiscal and financial policies of the U.S. government wholeheartedly.
Just thinking about that locally, we have a mayoral candidate in Brandon Johnson who said during the rioting that goes on in Chicago, routinely these days, that while you can't defend people looting stores on Michigan Avenue, for example, the real problem is big corporations looting the taxpayers for profit. Is that what's happening in Chicago? Is that the problem in Chicago? Is the big companies looting taxpayers, making profits at the expense of the little guy?
I mean, what an unbelievable insult, Dan, to those companies which are now leaving the city. I mean, Tyson Foods, Citadel, Boeing. I mean, these companies are taking their, evil. They're taking their jobs, their investment, their billions of dollars, and they're going somewhere else. And how can you blame them, Dan? I mean, you saw that headline this morning, Dan and Amy. You saw that headline this week that in the Chicago area businesses are going to be expected to have their own armed security to protect themselves. I mean, this city can't even protect the basic economic freedoms of its own citizens. That's, not to remember their own actual rights, their own physical rights. So this is why so many businesses, big and small, are abandoning the city. And Dan and Amy, as you know, you've been talking about it for months now. We need new leadership, economic leadership, political leadership. So a change has got to come. Otherwise, the city will continue to sink and bring our fortunes down with it.
I don't know if you've been down State Street or Michigan Avenue lately, but I don't even know where to start with how to get that back and businesses back. Because one of the main staples was Old Navy. They were there for 12 years, and they just pulled out. So literally, there's almost nothing left on State Street.
Oh, it's no big deal. We got casinos and we got marijuana dispensaries. That's all we need.
Well, I mean, there's no respect ever given, in my opinion, guys, from the type of thinking that comes in for a business owner. They always say business owners are short-term thinking. I mean, for a company to come and make a multi-billion-dollar investment in Illinois, in Chicago, bringing in all the infrastructure, bringing in all the investment dollars. I mean, that's not done just on a whim. But, of course, taxes from City Hall, taxes from Springfield, those still come on a whim. Oh, an extra 1% here, an extra 5% here. And it not just hurts the so-called greedy corporations, it hurts those small business people, Dan. And you've got, Dan and Amy, you have so many in your audience. Maybe they've got one employee. Maybe they've got two, just struggling to make, high 5 figures, maybe low 6 figures a year. And along comes Washington and says, oh, no, that'll be another $5,000, $10,000. It's outrageous, and it's exactly what's hollowing out the economy from the inside.
Well, there's something else, too. The talk, first of all, the state of Illinois, like these surveys of CEOs like Executive Magazine does, I mean, for the last decade, Illinois has been in the bottom 3, and where CEOs say they would locate a business with New York and California. I mean, that's where it's been, and you see the attrition that's gone on, and you have high-profile examples, and then you have below-the-fold examples that people don't pay attention to because they're not big enough, well-known enough companies, but they add up, and they add up quickly, and they're concurrent with the exodus of talent and capital from Illinois. But the cover story is always, well, hey, Dan, Jonathan, look at the West Loop. We got Google, we got young professionals. The West Loop is vibrant, and so on and so forth. And to some extent, that's true. And to some extent, that is a Potemkin village. Yeah, right. A massive company like Google can make it make sense for the talent pool that's still here to locate an operation in the West Loop. But the economics that a business like Google faces is very, very rarefied air. The risk versus reward, the risk versus reward analysis that most other companies that don't operate in that stratosphere are facing make it a no-brainer to stay away from here. And that's what sort of isn't explained when companies like Google or other big tech behemoths are pointed to.
Yeah, I think it's a spot-on point, Dan. And, the irony is now looking at today's economy, I mean, the big tech companies are the ones, in many ways, that benefited mostly from, if you will, the pandemic. A lot of stimulus money came, a lot of the low interest rates, financial benefits flowed to those large, big mega-cap companies. But now, as big companies begin to cut jobs and cut back, it's exactly those big tech companies where most of the cuts are coming. So, this will play out. Again, I stress that idea, the inflation of the 70s, it wasn't a 1 quarter or even a 1 or 2 year type of a phenomena. This unfolded over 7, 8, 9, 10 years, and That's why those who are, the president's taking a victory lap because he supposedly has inflation under control. It's come down from, 8% to 7.5% or 7%. But, this is a genie that's not going to be put back in the bottle. And as I said, it comes down to everyday Americans feeling it. They're not going on the vacations they would have. They're not buying the goods and services they would have. They're not sending their children to the schools they would have. All that's due to not their own greed or incompetence, but the financial decisions made by elected officials. And it's why, really the inflation has to be fought in D.C. much more than in Wall Street, Dan and Amy.
Well, Carter gave way to Reagan. Biden maybe gives way to DeSantis. We'll see. One other topic I wanted to tackle with you because I just find this so comical. This is akin to the Chinese Communist peace plan for Ukraine. TikTok set to limit to 1 hour daily screen time for users under 18. Those are our Chinese communist overlords looking out for our kids again. Isn't that wonderful?
I don't have a TikTok account, Dan, but you have to admire their ingenuity here and basically trying to get out in front of that impending regulation. I mean, one thing that Democrats and Republicans agree on, I guess big tech is evil. I don't know. I seem to use and enjoy their services most of the day long, but you see that regulation coming down the pipeline for social media writ large. So we've seen a lot of these companies try to get out ahead of it. Elon's been doing major changes. They know at Twitter and they know TikTok, especially given the fact that there is ties to the Chinese government, as you said, Dan. I mean, getting out ahead of it, especially when it comes to the kids. It's all about the kids. So by limiting that screen time and basically saying you'll need parental permission to access for more than an hour if you're underage, trying to get ahead of what D.C. is doing in terms of regulation of big tech.
He is the capitalist pig, Jonathan Hoenig, founding member of the Capitalist Pig Hedge Fund, Fox News contributor, author of a new textbook of Americanism, The Politics of Ayn Rand. Jonathan, thanks as always.
Best to you both. Be well.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
If you're talking about it, Dan and Amy are talking about it. It's Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Signature Bank is Chicago's fastest growing independently owned business bank, a bank where relationships still matter. I'm Dan Proft, and I know this because Signature Bank is my business bank.
Hey all, Jim Carr here. I am the owner of Carr Machine and Tool in Elk Grove Village and loyal customer of Signature Bank. As a second-generation owner, I knew I had to shift from operating as an old-school machine shop to what I can proudly say is now one of the fastest-growing aerospace manufacturing facilities in the region. Signature Bank was there every step of the way through our expansion efforts, including financing our new state-of-the-art facility. Their valuable industry expertise and confidence